In this module, we're taking a look at marriage and the family. First, let's talk about what the family is. The family is a social group characterized by typically a common residence who consider themselves related by blood, marriage, or adoption. Household, on the other hand, is really just the people who share the same living space. Households could refer to renters renting together, maybe roommates. It could also mean a traditional family living with their children and pets. So let's talk about what are all the functions of the family. Certainly the text will list these out. We're going to take each of them one by one, starting with really regulating sexual behavior. So how does the family do this? Well, no recorded society has ever allowed for incest. Now, this forbids the intercourse among closely related individuals, typically family members, and prescribing at what level a family member. The definition of close, though, really varies among society to society, and it can be very wide. Sometimes it could involve brother and sister. Other societies, like the US, typically are more at a cousin level. So it starts to define what is and what isn't a close relationship in terms of incest. So the family does this function. Often then, too, patterning reproduction. The family themselves often will set the social norms in the household with regard to who and when sex can be had, meaning that if you have a 16-year-old child, you're often trying to discourage or tell them, to wait until a certain age, or how your norms in your household work. That's all going to pattern reproduction, or encouraging it at that age, and you can certainly then also influence it. So for example, a family that tightly restricts free time outside of the school, makes clear that no sex before a certain age is permitted, they're basically patterning or controlling the reproduction model in that house. So that's one way that happens. There's also this role of organizing production and consumption. In primitive societies, this was a large function. Think about hunter and gatherer societies. Today we still find the economic system and family system really related and tied to one another. For example, we have all these medium-sized families, right? Mostly 2 to 3 kids. Thus, we've also started to see places like Costco, Target, Walmart, where families can easily shop together and start to consume and get all of the needs for the family met under one roof very quickly. It's patterning our consumption. Socializing children. That's one of the primary functions of what the family does. And we talked about this when we talked about social interaction. Socializing kids is the group that a child is born into is really paramount and critical. Teaching children right from wrong, how to survive, the basic life skills, it's all critical to fulfilling the roles of the family, and it's also looked at in a very functionalist way, that the family serves a purpose, and part of that purpose is to be the primary socialization factor. The family also provides care and protection, more so in pre-industrial societies. So a long time ago, they physically protected one another from animals, from other tribes. Today, it's much more of an economic protection. You or your parents or whomever is working in the family, that is an economic form of protection, different than you would have had to have done decades or hundreds of years ago, physically protecting. And often the family provides care when ill or injured. Now, that's not always the case, but largely it is still the case that even as an adult, your family is the one that provides that care to you. It's not necessarily a hospital or institution. They often kick you out the door a couple days after surgery, and then it's up to you and your family to care for yourself. They also provide social status. Well, what does that mean? Well, simply being born into a particular family, each individual receives material goods, socially recognized position, all the ascribed statuses. It could be good or bad, rich or poor. So think about if you were born into a very wealthy family, that comes with it a lot of different accolades, a lot of ease of getting to wealth, power, prestige. Doesn't mean everything's great, but it certainly has a lot more opportunities and at least a lot more social mobility. Single parent or nuclear family. Often that isn't your choosing when you're born, whether or not you're born into a single parent family or into a traditional, more nuclear family. Also, are you born into a family of those who own the means of production, those who are in charge, or are they working for an hourly rate? And then family structures outside of kind of what we think about. So nuclear family, a little bit of a joke there with The Simpsons, but really they actually are an example of a nuclear family. They have a husband, wife, kids, very traditional in the way in which we think about a traditional family here at least. Then you get into some interesting ones. So you have polygamous families, and there's 2 types there. There could be a polygynous family where the man has more than one wife, or you can get into a polyandrous family in which the woman has more than one husband. There's extended families. Maybe you have grandma and grandpa living with you. Maybe you have an uncle or aunt living with you. That's not that uncommon these days, especially with housing prices what they are. Often we find that extended families come together for the sake of sharing a common residence and splitting the costs. Now, there's also cohabitation, definitely on the rise. Your book talks about that as well. And I tie in domestic partnerships with cohabitation. While gay marriage is legal, domestic partnerships do exist still in a number of states and allow for kind of a sanctioned non-marriage when marriage isn't an option. But cohabitation is really the idea that you're living together, having a household, but you're not actually married yet. There's also LGBTQ families, so lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgendered, and queer families, or questioning. The Q can mean both of those things. Typically, those families are, they can also be single parent, they can also be extended families, but often they're classified as having a same-sex couple in some shape or form, or possibly a transgendered couple. And then there's childless couples, those couples that actually say, look, we don't want to have kids at all, and we're choosing not to have children. So as you think about the family and the ways in which it changes and the ways in which it shows up here in the US and abroad, there's a lot of different ways that it can manifest itself, and there's a lot of functions that the family provides. Be sure to read through the text, and thank you so much.